All right. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learning Tech Talks, where we are exploring the landscape of learning technology while cutting through the fluff to get the questions answered you need answered to make the right decisions when building your digital learning ecosystem. Today, I'm joined again by Jordan Fladell from M-Level, and we are talking about navigating the purchasing minefield when it comes to learning technology. So, interesting topic. For those of you joining us live, be sure to give us a like, a thumbs up, share the post, and tag in some folks who might benefit from this conversation. But before we get started, the question of the week this week is very appropriate. Marcello, you've inspired us by this one because of your comment about our lack of hair. So we thought a good start to this would be, Jordan, you got to tell us, what is the childhood? And we debated what childhood means, and I'm okay with where we landed. But what childhood hairstyle are you most embarrassed or proud of, depending on how you want to define it?
Well, thank God my children aren't watching this, but I distinctly remember when I was 19, heading down to a spring break in Daytona with a spiked hair that you literally spiked short, tiny spikes on the top of my hair, cut across, and then completely being bleached by lemon juice over a 4-day period so that I had orange hair and a picked up diamond stud earring in my ear with it. So it was quite an embarrassing feat before I had made it to adulthood. And probably the precipice for why I have such a shiny bald head today.
Okay. For those of you watching, I'd love to hear your most embarrassing hair story. So make sure to post them in the comments. So for mine, I have to ask a follow-up though. Was the lemon bleach thing a long-term thing, or was it just a short-term thing?
It was a very short-term thing. When I got back home, I will just say that as I arrived back home from spring break, and my mother and I sat down for dinner that evening upon return, she made it very clear that an orange hair color was not by design. I was 20 years too early, I guess, or 30 years too early, because apparently I can wear any color hair I wanted right now.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, and the reason I asked was mine, right? I bleached and tipped my hair for a good chunk of time in my early years, which is probably, like you said, why I don't have much left. But there are no shortage of embarrassing pictures where I thought I was looking pretty cool with my bleached hair. Sometimes it was orange, but I had it done, so it actually was white. But
that's the benefit of coming from my generation, is we didn't have cell phones or no one took pictures. There's no record of this other than the 5 people who were with me on that trip who I'm still friends with.
It's probably for the best. The worst part was, though, one time I decided I was going to color it too after I'd bleached it, and I thought I'd turn it red, but the red bled all over the top, and so literally I had a red circle on the top of my head and white hair. It was terrible. That would probably cap for the most embarrassing.
You'd be trending on Instagram though with that right now, or YouTube.
Maybe it's good cell phones weren't around when I was doing that either. So yeah. Well, thanks for being here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I know there's been a lot of activity and questions around things like this coming up. And it's funny. Somebody chimed in before we get into it. My brother chimed in. He said, "Don't forget, I used to put a Nike symbol shaved in the back of my head." So I guess that would maybe also qualify as embarrassing. But so let's get into this. So we're talking about this purchasing minefield, and I think there's some big things that we wanted to talk about. We started talking about them before we went live. And I think we'll definitely run out of time before we get into it. But when we talked last year, we brought this up as a topic, and I'm curious because I was on board, but I guess I never asked a follow-up question. Why was this such an important topic for you?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, M-Level being in the emerging learning technology space, it's something that is near and dear to my heart to help people understand the technology buying process, because often we're in what I'll call the initial pursuit stage with a prospect, where they've reached out to us, and they're like, "Hey, we're in search of a tool." Whether in early days it was gamification, microlearning. A lot of days it's about learning analytics.
Yep.
And they'll reach out, say, "Hey, this is the things I need." They'll put a feature set together. We'll have an initial conversation, and then next thing I know, they'll be like, "Well, wait, we've got to issue this RFP. You got to go down this process," and then they don't select us because some vendor somewhere selected and filled out the RFP. Maybe it's an incumbent that says, yes, they can do the following things. And then about 6 months to a year after that process is over, I'm back on the phone with that same person. And I get the response of, well, they said they could do an RFP, but it didn't exactly work as it was supposed to. And, it's this kind of mea culpa, but they don't, there's clearly a challenge that's being presented to that learning technologist or learning buyer that, really to me is an opportunity for improvement, not only for the learning professional, but for the corporations themselves that they're responsible for serving and the shareholders that fund those corporations and pay for those daily operations, right? So, it's kind of a three-pronged approach of why I care so much. But yes, that's what kind of pumped it up.
So there's some stake in it for you, and I get that, right? But like we talked about before, it really is about, and it's the whole premise of this show and why I started doing this was we need to demystify and we need to get through some of this stuff because it's ultimately inhibiting us from being able to move forward when we get stuck in some of this stuff. And, we talked about it with the RFP process before we came live. And I think this is one that those of you watching probably are very familiar with if you've ever gone through the technology buying process. It started, you shared a little bit about it. It started from a good place, I think. I think it started from a good place. It's since grown teeth, fangs, claws, and become in many ways an inhibitor of innovation versus an enabler of it, I guess would be the way I put it. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think the RFP, when the original days of early RFPs were generally to prevent people from buying from their friends without doing due diligence, right? Or business being bought. It really started on the auspice of that. Now it's really turned into this process design in its intent to gather information to make the company make the best decision. But the problem with it is an RFP is a document that creates an us versus them relationship right from the get-go. Right. So now we've taken this person who's supposed to be our business partner and we've set them up on the table and said, you respond to this document and I'll get back to you in my black box and let you know when I'm ready to talk to you.
Yeah.
And inside that RFP, by the way, is a list of items. Those items don't generally contain detail. They say things like, do you have gamification? Yes. Do you have microlearning? Yes. Do you have learning analytics?
Yeah.
Yes. By the way, with no definition, what does yes mean? No follow-up to things like, what does it cost to implement gamification on your system? Just because I have it doesn't mean that it works without you spending more money. So it's saying yes to something. There are words with responses that go in a matrix. The matrix doesn't deal with anything other than analysis and doing analysis on what people's responses were and scoring them based on their response. Not the quality of the response, by the way. It's the response of, did you say yes or no? Right.
Well, and having gone through this more times than I can count, right? That's where this whole critical analysis behind it comes into play that a lot of times doesn't happen. It turns into an exercise of checking boxes, right? Let's see who checks the most boxes. And I think before even getting to this, one of the things that I think ultimately contributes to some of this problem is not starting with that outcome of what are we trying to do first. Right. We're going to a feature chase. And I think you said that either now or before where we said you're chasing a feature. We need gamification. We need micro learning. Let's chase that. And then let's come up with a list of things that we think might be relevant to that. And then let's go through the box and check those boxes. And I think that I've seen that go south many times.
Well, I'll argue it goes further than that. I actually think it starts
That's
before
fair.
the RFP, before you start chasing the feature, before it's not the outcome based. It's because there's no so there's a person in our LinkedIn post that we were going through that talked about lacking a seat at the table and getting brought to the table when the business has finally decided that they're ready to do something, then being asked to create a solution that then leads to the RFP process. And I apologize for being direct to the person in the LinkedIn feed, but the reality is you got to earn the seat at the table, and that's where this starts. If you're constantly thinking about the outcome base, if you're constantly interacting with the business and providing them value, then you're not going to be chasing technology. You are going to be dealing with outcomes because that's where it starts. You're not in the room to have the conversation about it. You're being told the outcome that's being created. So just play with it.
It's a fair point. And I think it's reasonable to say, right, if you're chasing outcomes they come naturally when you have that seat. You don't need to try and figure out what they are because you know what they are.
Because you're basically sitting at the table saying, hey, okay, wow, I just heard you say this is struggling or this is our challenge. Now I hear your pain versus you showing up at my desk with a commit. Because I remember that meeting that occurred before they got to you to ask you to go find the technology to go solve the problem to create the outcome. There was discussion.
There were business discussions happening. This is what's going on.
Right. That's someone not summarizing for you to go get the outcome. And now you're going to say, and I think that you're right. You do need to determine what the outcome is to go find the solution. But even further, if you can get yourself in the room to be discussing and hearing the pain, then my hand's over here, the pain, then you're going to have that challenge up there. So yes, but you are right that you need to identify what am I trying to accomplish before searching technology first. And then you need to do due diligence, not on new vendors, but you need to do due diligence internally. Because part of the other buying technology problem is the technology department doesn't want more things to maintain. And sorry, I'm just,
no, I laugh because I've been part of those conversations where, you first start talking to the technology department and you go, I'm from L&D and I want to talk about this thing and they just look at you like, here we go again, right? The eyes roll.
Well, remember, I always tell people walk in other people's shoes, right? So now the technologist's life is, especially in a support group or has to maintain a system. Yep. It's got, all the people do is bark at you all day long. This isn't working, that's not working, this, so constantly being barked at, right? Then you're coming down the hallway, shiny object. I just got this request. I want to go implement a whatever. I'm not going to pick on whatever it is, this learning technology. And, some organizations don't even bother to do this, but most should stop you and say, have you done your due diligence yet to determine we can't do this internally?
Yep.
The answer of I know it is not correct. The answer is I actually have. I've gone and looked at all of our systems, and while SharePoint can do X, and while this tool can do Y, and while this, it's really not going to meet our goals, let me tell you. Then the technology is your business partner. Then they're like, holy, I get it. We need it for the business reason. Yep. Now they're interested in supporting what you need versus saying, great, now I'm going to have a tool that does, I have my 17th portal I'm launching this month that does something different. Which is
and I think so what we're getting at is an important takeaway from this, that the technology buying process doesn't start with the RFP. It doesn't start with once you've decided already, hey, we're buying this thing, now we're going to go through this process. It really starts, to your point, goes back first to building that relationship with the business to the point where you're part of those discussions, you're in those sessions where you're hearing the pain and you're bringing that expertise to say, I hear this is what's going on, and challenging it, digging into it and understanding, okay, now I understand what this is. Now let's talk about, what might be able to help solve it. Do your due diligence. That's the other part of it. Very few organizations I've talked to or have worked with don't have anything, right? Sometimes the kind of knee-jerk reaction of, well, we don't have this. Well, you probably do. You probably do in some capacity if you really dig into it.
Yeah, and think about how many friends you're going to make in that process. The IT department's going to be super appreciative of the fact that you went and did all the homework. The procurement organization you're asking to go jump in is going to understand you've done part of their heavy lifting for them. Right. I've gone through and I met with, and I'm just going to give an example. I met with marketing who had a portal where we interact with our sellers in the field. I reviewed the portal with them. I understood it. I met with the vendor who supports the portal and the technology. And what I've come to the conclusion is that even though that's a nice portal, we can't use that to reach this training goal with our external sales force. So that's why we need this. That conversation that you get on the other side is not going to be one of rolling my eyes. Here comes another one of these business. This person, okay, I've got one in line here that has basically done the homework, gone through the exercise, evaluated what we've already invested in, and now they're ready to have a conversation. So now I have a partnership internally, which, by the way, I know it's a challenge to work sometimes internally with your business partners to get the RFP written, right? And approved and documented. But now think how excited they are to participate when you've done their homework for them, right? You've done the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting happens. They show you're committed. That gets you to that. Plus, by the way, you're going to learn a bunch along the way.
Well, and going along with that, this is where the need for us as an industry to upskill ourselves in some of this technology and understand how this stuff really works and what the capabilities are, so that when you go look at that marketing portal, you don't just look at it as, ooh, that looks pretty, but you understand, and this is how it works. This is how it operates. This is what kind of capabilities it has, what it connects with what it doesn't connect with, so that when IT asks you, have you looked at XYZ platform, you're not just saying, yeah, but I don't like it. It's well, no, these are the things we needed to be able to do. These are the things that we needed to be able to support. And unfortunately, we can't, or it doesn't work like that. And that's why we've eliminated it as an opportunity.
Absolutely.
So let's dig into this one a little bit more as we look at that, because this is where the balancing act can come in, especially for those of you watching who may be from large global organizations. You can get lost in that phase too. And I think sometimes that is a challenge, where if you're trying to scout out every possibility around the world of every possible solution that may exist, you may completely never move anywhere. Now, how do you handle, or when you've worked with people, how do you help them navigate that balancing act of not trying to uncover every possible rock? Because you could spend the rest of your career just doing that in some organizations.
Yeah, so I think when you're in a global company, I think the first thing you do is you isolate down region first, right? Am I doing a global search, or am I solving a regional problem, right? So I deal with a lot of global companies, and there'll be times this is an America's problem, or this is a European Union problem, or this is a APAC or EMEA region problem, right? So you got to first understand what you're trying to solve. So that's the first step. The second step is you got to make friends in places, right? You got to make friends in the business, right? So that helps the process, right? I'm not suggesting you say call it that. Can I get access to all of our portals across the entire world? It's not this question. I'm not even slightly suggesting that. What I am suggesting is, let's go back to the example of the LinkedIn feed that we have the wonderful woman who put that post there of her frustration, which I really appreciate. So let's say let's say the sales team has come in and they have the request. They've made the inbound request, right? Because unfortunately today we're still as an industry mostly in the order taker space versus the proactive solution space. So there's a pain exists. I got to solve the pain. Stick in their ecosystem, right? Okay, great. Thank you, VP of Sales, Director of Sales. Insert title here. I'd love to see how you're communicating with your associates today. What technologies you use to do that. Before I dive into it now, when I've said that question, what have I done? I've isolated my footprint to a small, narrow area. You don't have the obligation to going back to IT and saying, look, I've uncovered, globally in the European or Germany region, we have a portal that the HR department uses to do benefits that can be repurposed. That's not this. No. I'm not saying you all now the new technology optimization strategist across the company, but you are doing the due diligence within that business person's portfolio to get access. Now, think about that question, right? That question is going to do two things. One, it's going to limit the amount of work you have to do to find out what they have. Benefit, right? Makes it easy. Two, the business partner is going to turn and really appreciate that response.
Yep.
And what are you going to learn about along the way? Their business.
The way they work.
Doing it, right? Maybe you get to have a conversation with a sales rep who says, okay, I've seen this portal. It's whatever, designed to do whatever. This is the communication vehicle, and now I need to deliver training through it. Okay, I got it. And this training has to be measured to find. Okay, got it. Let me just talk to a rep. How do they interact? What do they think of the portal today? So if a rep says, I know the sales leader loves this portal, but it is a POS.
I hate it.
It's a POS. I never use it. It's too clunky. I can't get it on my phone. Now I have ammunition to go back and say, oh my God, the portal's here. It could do the job because it does provide A, B, and C functionality. However, when I spoke to the field, what I learned is they don't access it. They don't use it because they don't have the time. So they want a simple, elegant thing that shows up on their phone. I should make a phone. I'm trying to figure out like a phone, right? Whatever, small phone. That's my challenge. And now I'm going after a targeted nuance with the business support, the IT department. And now I can ask vendors very detailed questions as I have all the ammunition and information I need.
Yes. Well, and I can't count how many times that has, because again, it's a twofold value for you as an L&D professional. Because one, getting back to that, if you're trying to build a seat at the table, it's a good step to do it because it shows you care, you're interested, and you're trying to work within their business versus coming and saying, right, I know this is what you need for your business, when maybe you don't. And I can say there have been multiple times where you start digging and looking under rocks and you go, you know what, maybe we don't, maybe we do need to tap into this, or you learn something about this is the way work's really flowing. And so we need to figure out, even if we need an additional technology, how do we incorporate it into this? So you can ask those questions about, well, you say integration and you check that box, but what does integration really look like? Because this is the way work happens. Can you tie into that?
Right. Just because a vendor says they have an integration, they have not lived in your world. Right.
Correct.
We don't work every day inside large companies. A lot of these points companies that look like N level are tiny. So they live in a world where they're able to do that. And a lot of other companies are big software companies loaded with technologists, loaded with people who know how to use stuff. So they can make assumptions and they have the resources to do it. They don't live in your world. Your world is yours. Our world is ours and their world is theirs. And so if you're able to provide a very detailed analysis up front, you're going to get a better result through that process. And you're also going to be able to understand and understand where the potential pitfalls are. And like I said, I think the biggest value is that added seat to the table. If you want to get to that table, basically show them you care. And then all of a sudden they're going to want you in the room because your opinion was valuable, right? And that's the key. People don't want people in the room just to hear what they have to say, even if they think that even if the person coming in the room thinks they have value for what it is. If I don't respect you before you walked in, I'm certainly not going to respect you when you show up to talk to me. But if you add value, surprise me with value, all of a sudden your brand raises in my world. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, we shouldn't have this meeting without Chris. Right? Has anybody called Chris in this meeting? Right?
That people say that a lot.
I imagine. I mean, that's why I used you as an example, because your brain. I don't want to have this conversation without Chris because I think we're going to do something that's short-sighted. Because in my experience, Chris, in the organization, everybody knows it. And people on the phone nod. They've been to a meeting and somebody says, "Wait, is so and so here?" I don't want to start till this person gets here, or somebody didn't show up yet and they're late, and we can just go on without them. Right? When they do that, I can go on without them. You know what that means? It's a nice way of saying, they're whatever. They're not going to add any value anyway. If they miss something, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it goes back to, I actually was having a discussion this week about this. Is the term you used is the one that I think is the one that goes right along. It's respect. It's a respect thing. It's respecting the business leaders and the role they play. It's respecting the people that are doing the actual work and understanding that they know more than we do as L&D people, and that's okay. There are things we know more about than they do, but there's a mutual respect of I respect that this is where you are, this is the role I play, versus it's very disrespectful when someone comes in claiming they know more than you do and they aren't in your chair and you go, well, okay, thanks.
Right, exactly. Like, appreciate you. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for stopping by.
In the South, they might say something like,
continue this meeting without Christopher.
Right,
Thanks.
exactly.
And his silly hair stories. So with this, because you see it right on your side, I mean, I've gone through this a number of times, but on the vendor side, I can only imagine how many times you go through this. What are some of the things that we maybe haven't already mentioned, or are there ones where you just you watch and you go, this is gonna go south. This is a landmine that their foot is on. They're standing on it right now, and it's going to go. Are there any other ones that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, so there are two things that I look for in the pursuit process that generally get my my red flags flying everywhere. It used to be any RFP would drive me insane. I've kind of gotten a little off that soapbox.
Okay.
Slightly. I'm not off it forever, but we'll just say that's it. But the first one is when it becomes a I'm hiding things relationship.
Okay.
So let me describe what that means. So we'll often tell the prospect, I can't share this with you. I don't want to tell you this. Okay. I don't want to review what you built for me as a demo before it goes in front of the committee. I won't respond to any of your questions anymore. Okay. I'm bound by the rules of operations of our procurement process. These are words that basically mean we are not building a partnership, right? And once that happens, that means I have a person on the side who is going down a process that they've built a list of things they don't understand. Okay. I mean, it's really funny. Like, I'll use the example, right? I have multiple people these days talking about using X API. Unbelievably powerful tool for the 70 people that can code and implement X API. An unbelievably powerful tool for the systems that are able to take the data feed of X API. And unbelievably valuable for the people who are actually using the data that's created from X API for anything before value. What I will share is that in our deep due diligence of talking to all of our customers and prospects, what I hear back is we're using X API to track who took the test,
right,
how long they spent on task, and the completion results.
Yep.
So what are you doing? You're basically replacing SCORM with a much more richer version of SCORM. But by the way, what are you doing with the data? Where are you storing it? I can't store it anywhere. Our LMS data doesn't support it. I can't store it anywhere. I bought an LRS, but the LRS isn't implemented yet, and I can't get what I need out of it, right? Yep. So it's funny to me, right? Because now you're chasing a feature. You're not chasing a business problem, yep. Right? What are you doing? Just having a permanent record of everything isn't a business problem. You already have a record keeper. Right? You got one, right? Why? So tell me, I'm going to chase XAPI because I want to get question level statement analysis. I want to build dashboards, and I'm going to turn back to the business. They're going to allow them to take action from the learning experiences. The XAPI is going to drive our dynamic AI that we're building that's going to feed automatic course delivery through our learning experience portal and our content library. Oh my God, that's awesome. Let's go do that.
Right. That's a great conversation.
Right. Oh, I'm going to go get XAPI. It's not on the shelf. I'm buying XAPI today. Thanks. Call number one, XAPI. Thanks. Order delivered. Like the truck you got delivered Amazon, ship box.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah. So XAPI is in that package, Chris. Go ahead and open it up. Or,
yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll bring it.
And by the way, it comes out of the box as is. So that's the next one, right? It's like, then I know that the person doesn't ask the next question, which really gets under my skin. What does it cost to implement? Right. So those are signs that it creates an adversarial relationship. That's when I know that we've kind of like, I'm like, okay, this is a person who's chasing things versus buying, and they're making it, I can't stress this enough. And I'm going to say this. It is a partnership. You at a large company are not getting rid of the vendor you choose for a long time, because all the political capital you juiced up to go get your new shiny object, right? Nobody forgot that.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, the last time I checked, we don't create capital in the L&B business. We don't create capital as in revenue. We may influence it. So we don't get to say, well, that didn't work, but I got to go make more sales or more marketing or more leads from it, right? And there are exceptions.
There are exceptions. I was going to say, I've carried a P&L. I've carried a P&L in L&D, but it's not the norm. For sure.
And right, if you buy too many shiny objects without doing it, you don't want a confrontational relationship with your partner. Right?
Correct.
If you beat them up the entire time through the process, they're coming to the table like this. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, you shrunk my price down. You got the discount. I threw in this. I got that. But now you know what? You made the account so much more adversarial versus a partnership that now I'm left in the room with you, Chris, and you and I are there now doing the deployment. And we're like, you're asking me for things. And I'm like, Chris.
Now we're roommates. And we signed a 3-year agreement. Right. And we've got to live in the same place. No,
that's exactly right. So you wouldn't do that with your roommate, right? Exactly, a good example, right? You wouldn't.
Well, and that is one of the things that really was one of the genesis of this show. Was there is a lot of this adversarial relationship, and I see it frequently. This us versus them on the practitioner side versus the vendor side, and it's not productive. And are there, I'm sure if people are watching or in the comments, are there examples where things have gone south? Sure. I'm sure, I know it happens. I've been part of those things that happens, but that's not the norm. And I think as an industry, we can't operate off the exception versus the standard, because not having that partnership will completely annihilate your success and the potential for success.
You want to be able to pick the phone up and know that person's got your back.
Yes.
Well, how are you going to have your back on somebody who's just beaten the pants off you, who's played cloak and dagger with you, who's, played, hide and go seek, all things which are super.
It's a trust, right? We talked about respect. It's a trust. There's no trust.
Right. If you say, I'm going to get back to you within 2 weeks, and you don't even bother writing an email a week in saying, hey, we're running behind schedule. My legal counsel did X, my IT department had Y, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks go by, and then, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. That's not a partnership. Then you're creating, because what nobody understands is the person you're working with a partnership likely has a boss too, right? So they're going down the hallway and they're saying, hey, customer prospect X is right around the corner. I need to marshal resources for them. I need to make sure we're ready to do the deployment. I need to make sure we're ready to go build these programs. I need to make sure. So I'm asking you, Mr. and Mrs. Boss, to provide these resources to me and guarantee they're going to be available on this date. Right? Right. So now that person goes down the hallway. They say, great news, Chris. Great news, Chris. I talked to my boss. We are golden. We are fully ready to support this.
Boom.
Right. You go off in your merry way. You're like, this is cool. And then you don't call back for 2 weeks. The date goes by. Nothing shows up because you're slightly embarrassed probably. And I get it. I got left held to dry. I made these promises. Now somebody else didn't do it. And I'm afraid to have the moral courage to have the conversation with the person on the side. So instead I'm going to hide.
Yep.
Right. And then what happens? That rep's like, well, rep has a boss. Boss comes in and says, hey, it's
we rallied all these resources for you. We've done all this because you said in 2 weeks we were going to have this, and what's going on? And now now they're getting their cage rattled. Right.
And now when you come back 4 weeks later, what's going to happen? Well, you told me you had all these resources. I did 4 weeks ago, and now already we're at where? We're already at conflict. We haven't even gotten a chance to go on our first a venture together, and we're already lined up going,
Yes.
now this one I can't trust, this one I can't, and then your next choice is to turn around and
that's just where this just continues to go south further and further down the line. And it is. And it's why I am so passionate about this topic, because really we need each other. We need each other. And that vulnerability and willingness to say, look, you get it on the provider side. You get things go south. You get budgets get snuffed. You get things change. That's okay. Just let's have the transparency. Let's have that conversation so we feel like trusted partners. We can talk through it. We can strategize around it. And I agree. And I think that's where, with this purchasing stuff, you're not a commodity. And I think that's where it can go south, is when you're looking at learning technology is nothing more than a commodity that we purchase when we need it.
But once we get that partnership going, here's the added benefit. Forget the first implementation. When you need that thing, and it's because procurement's at the end of the year and they're backed up with other deals, and yours didn't make the top of the list because they're working on a massive supply chain deal to make sure they have the one core ingredient to make the product work. You're never going to get anybody's attention when you start that, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that gamification platform you wanted to bring in, I'm sorry, that is not at the top of our priority.
Well, you need an add-on added, or you need some work done, whatever it is, from that same partner. They can't trust you.
Right.
So they can't go back to their boss and say, hey, I know that this gigantic corporation who has all types of integrity, who's been our great business partner, who's done everything they said they're going to do, right? That's an easy conversation. Someone walks in my office as a CEO and says, hey, this customer who's always been our great partner needs you to start the work today, and they'll get you the invoice and everything else a month later. I'll finance that deal. Right. But if somebody calls me on the phone and says, who was tough in the sales buying process, who kind of always doesn't do what they're supposed to do in the buying process, I ain't lifting a finger, because I can't trust you, because you don't deliver on it, because you're not a partner, because you've created an adversarial relationship. You don't show up to calls. You don't value the relationship. You can't, the jump in how high philosophy of lap dogs only works so long until the dog gets big enough to bite you.
Well, this goes back to, and that right there goes back to even just when you think about basic leadership principles, right? And then, now this is we're not even talking about learning technology, but it's just that, right? When you rule with a hammer, it'll get you compliance. It'll get maybe people to move across the line, but that's it. That's as far as you'll get them to go. And once that hammer disappears, like boom, people are gone.
You also get a free test at the culture of the relationship if you partner, right? You get that's what the prospecting process should be, is a test of the cultural relationship you're going to have with that partner, right? Technology evolves, ecosystems change. So you now we'll move into what happens. So you buy it, right? And most technology today is cloud-based, right? So let's assume the majority. There are some still on-premise solutions that are out there. So I don't want to say the whole world's gone cloud, but let's just say that all the innovation's in the cloud. Okay, right? Right. No one's
on record.
no one's spending money to build fancy client server apps. They're not doing it. They're trying to figure out how fast they can get.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Okay, great. So here's the thing about the cloud. It operates on the internet, right? The internet runs on a network. So we're going to get a little complicated here. The network has an organization in your group called network operations. They run your next corporate network. They make changes to protect the corporate network. Let's say one of those changes is they change what the approved URL
IP. I know. I've had this happen. Right? I've had it happen.
Right. Well, the likelihood the vendor changed the IP address on their platform, very low.
Very low.
Just so we're clear. I mean, just call it spade a spade. People do port, but it's a low likelihood. So now what happens? You're sitting at your desk, your phone rings, your business unit in some faraway country in the morning.
You're about to do a major
release, and they can't
hypothetically about to do a major launch, and something nobody can access it.
So now what do? You pick the phone up and you start railing. God damn it! You told me. Sorry, excuse my French, but you told me this thing's gonna be. And the person, what are you talking about? We're fully operational. Everything's here. It's fully live. Here, look at it on my screen. I can show it to you. Well, why can you see it and I not? Well, if you talk to your network administrators, why would I talk to them? Well, then you have to explain whitelisting IP addresses, blah, 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 blah. Oh, what can you do to help? Nothing, because in the process, we don't have a partnership. But in a partnership, get me on the phone, because under the SLA, under the contract rules, I'm not at fault. right? Once as a vendor, I'm out. You have two choices to be. You could be a great partner, right, and help the person solve the problem. Sometimes, by the way, if you have a great partner, they're solving problems that aren't just theirs, right? Because they're on the phone talking to your network administrator because they speak a foreign language in network administration, right? One that you don't understand, right? As a learning professional, what is a whitelist? Who's a URL? You know, what is an IP address?
What is an IP address?
Right. I need a DNS. What's a DNS?
Yep.
You know, a bumper sticker. What do I do with that? Right. So, you know, now
my driver's license is current.
Right. Like somebody told I can drive. What do you want me to go to the DMV for? But the point being is you've got this partner now who's going to get on the phone and say, hey, put me in touch with your network administrator. Let's discuss were there any network changes? Did you get any emails that read the following things? Oh, I did. Cool. Get that email now. Let's send that email across. This is going to be fixed in about 7 minutes as long as you have a great partnership with your network operations team, right? Call the network operations team, boom. Even better, the strategic partner you're outsourcing the business to, especially in the contact center space or support space, changed their network last night.
Yep.
Right.
Well, it's happened to all of us. And I think going back to something that we had talked about earlier, this is why it is so critical as we move into this digital space for us as L&D professionals. No, we don't need to become IT experts, but we do need to better understand some of these things so that instead of picking up the phone and yelling at your vendor when you can't access the app, you realize, hey, something's breaking down. That call is very different now. It's this is what's going on. Can you help me with that? I'm trying to figure this out. And yeah, we all lose our cool. It happens.
Of course.
But when you've built that trusted partnership, people understand when you lose your cool that, hey, this happened. It's not the norm. This is something that, we're just experiencing temporarily.
Yes.
So with it, let's go into the RFP thing a little bit more. And I know it's a hot button for you, but it's one that I think it's not going away. I think organizations love it, hate it. It's there. Let's talk about how to make the most of that and make it work in an environment that's beneficial for you as a learning practitioner, but also so that the vendor doesn't feel like they're just at the beck and call of an organization being asked to fill out check boxes. What are some best practices that you can say from your side, hey, this is the kind of stuff we realize we're going to have to go through an RFP. This is what you can do to help it be as successful as possible and not let it create tension between us, before we even signed on the dotted line.
Besides the obvious one, spend a lot of time before you ask for the RFP, doing the research on your own before you turn it over to vendor management, which is where it's going to live.
Okay.
So that's A number one. So don't just say, besides chasing buzzwords, don't just say I need this and let the vendor management team take over. A number one, they don't really understand what you're asking them to do other than to manage the vendor process, right? They may make you the SME and ask you to write it, but they also don't understand what you're looking to accomplish, right? So that's first number one. Number two is literally put as much detail as you can into the RFP and be very specific, okay. Right. So if you want to make sure that they have available integrations from third-party content providers, define what you mean by integration. What is the company standard for integration? What's the user experience going to be like, and what are the requirements for it? Because if you just write the word, do you provide third-party content sources? Check. Do they integrate into your system? Check. You did not define what integration means, nor did you define what third-party content means. And therefore, I could check both boxes because I can define what integration means to me. And those are too generic. So if you say, I want it to integrate and I want third-party content sources, I want you to integrate into this platform, that means for us, you must use the standard API provided by this system. So here's the system we want you to integrate into, not do you integrate into, here it is. So if it's Workday, it's SuccessFactors, it's provided we're not doing an LMS replacement, right? So Workday, SuccessFactors, et cetera. Or if you're doing an LMS, I want you to put in this talent management suite. And then as part of your RSP response, I want you to demonstrate it either in a visual. By the way, it's easy to do that because today's world, we can snap a quick whatever they call animate video, go animate, right? Capture the screenshots, take the screenshots and show the example, right? Now, what are you getting for that, right? So first of all, you're getting an example of what it's going to look like, right? So you're not surprised by it. Second of all, you're going to be able to demonstrate to the vendor when they say, well, we said it was, you said integration, that's integration to us means X. Well, now it's not integration. You put a visual in here. You committed to this visual. That's why we selected you You want to talk about commitment. Here's the visual, right? I want learning analytics. Awesome. What do you want the learning analytics to do?
What does that mean to you?
What does that mean to you? Because
how are you going to use them?
How are you going to use it? What are your requirements from that interaction? Define them. If you can't define them, don't ask for it. Right? I want virtual reality. For what?
Not sure.
Not sure, but I want it. Okay. I want it to be mobile. Okay. Is it a mobile app experience? Is mobile the tablet or is mobile the iPhone? I mean, sorry, not the iPhone, the phone. Right? And does it have to have an app or not have an app? And everybody else has to have an app. So, the vendor can say, yes, we have an iPad experience that does work on mobile web, but we also have an app that we will allow you to have your
dedicated app, right? Or you can custom brand or whatever.
Right. I want your app to live in our mobile iron solution or a corporate app store. Right. First of all, you have to know you have a corporate app store, but let's just go past that. Right. Okay, great. Have you done this before? Please demonstrate an example of where you've done this before. Talk to us the level of effort to do this. Right. These are all things that are real. They're not unreasonable. You're asking questions. Provide the level of detail, because what you don't want is surprises, right? I won't name vendors, but a lot of them will check the boxes because they know that they know that if they don't check the boxes, they're eliminated. And all they want to be is brought to the table. And when they're brought to the table,
being able to have a conversation.
Big, gigantic companies, okay? They're huge companies, or they're new innovative technologies that go in and say, we can do artificial intelligence. My new favorite one. Do you have yes, I have artificial intelligence.
Right.
Awesome. How do you show it to me? How do you maintain it? How do I make changes to it? All the questions you want to know about artificial, there's a whole, if you go to our YouTube site, there's a whole thing, how to buy and manage your artificial intelligence project they put together, because what does it mean? I mean, it's a buzzword.
Well, artificial intelligence is as wide as the ocean is deep. That can mean
subject to
a million different things.
Right.
So, right. Yeah. So really it's the specificity. And this goes back to that. Yes, first having the seat at the table, but two, figuring out what are the outcomes that you really need so that you can articulate, this is what I want it to be able to do. This is how we're going to use that. And this is what we need from this.
So even if you can't get to see the table, that same RFP response, stop the person in the business. Okay, I want to spend at least 2 hours with you talking about exactly how you want this experience to be. Are there any examples? Can you show it to me visually? Can you demonstrate where you've seen it before? Are there other people? Are there competitors who are doing this that you know about? Give me all the, it's turn your consultant hat on internally or a therapist hat on and ask a bunch of questions, right? I mean, seriously, you go to a therapy session, right? What is it? The therapists are great. They put you on a couch, they ask you questions, you answer them, they repeat the question, they repeat your answer to you in a new question, right? Yep. They're masters at getting you to talk and give you information that they never repeat to you in the same process, right? So become a therapist, internal corporate therapist. I'm coming to see you today and I want to understand your problem. Please take a seat on my couch and we're going to dive deep today into all your issues.
Well, issue Learning Tech Talks couches as a result.
Exactly. You can brand that, Chris. It's a whole new thing you got going on.
Sponsor that movement, Jordan.
Right, exactly.
Well, so the other thing, and this is one of the things that can be a bit of a delicate balancing act on our side, I think, is there is, because you brought up putting this whole list, and sometimes, and I've seen them, the lists go through the moon, and it's like, really, what? Like, you're looking for the panacea of technology. Like, you want the thing that does. Why is making breakfast on this list of requirements?
I'm hungry.
But the thing with it that I think sometimes can be challenging, that can be a little unnerving and terrifying, is that this is a big process to go through this. It's a lot of work. You lose a lot of hair through it, and so you want to make sure you're trying to purchase something that isn't just going to meet your immediate needs, but at the same time be able to carry you forward, so that you don't get something and then you're going, okay, well that got us through, but how do you carry forward? It's a balancing act though, because I've seen it where the list is so long that you say by the time you even operationally are able to implement any of that stuff, you'll be retired. So,
Chris, take a step back. I think you brought up an unbelievable point here. And I'm just going to put it out of technology for a second.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the general practitioner in the medical space, right? You have a doctor, right? You go see a doctor. Generally, hopefully, everyone here on this cast, whatever the requirement is for annual physicals, they're doing that, right? The moment they identify a problem, the general practitioner does what? Calls a specialist. Says, you got to go see a specialist, right?
Yep.
Whether it's in my case, I'm going through right now, I saw a spinal specialist. Right now, I'm going to see a specialized orthopedic surgeon in back surgery. Right, these are special.
Near and dear to you right now.
Near and dear, right? So this is why I'm using this example, right?
Yes, perfect.
So now let's go to this RFP example. I've thrown the kitchen sink in the RFP. I've picked the best generalist. So I have the general practitioner in the room. What I really need is the best learning analytics platform, or the best frontline workforce platform, or the best whatever it is. What the general practitioner does not invest in the specialty, they invest in generalities. They are not going to be the best at any one of those things because that's not their core competency, right? So why would, on God's green earth, would I want a general practitioner to solve my specific problem? I would not go to I love my general practitioner, family friend, great guy, good family, great people, smart as all get out. He's not allowed to touch my back. Nor will he be near my back other than to provide advice on who he would talk to about the back. So in my case, right, who do you partner with? Who's the best person you have that does X? That's what, go with the slivers. Now, I know the next thing, but Jordan, now if I have all these slivers, I've got to integrate them in. They've all got to work. Awesome. Because you know what? The key is, and again, we talked about this in our first talk, the technology world is going to continue to innovate at a pace that's going to be greater than you can keep up with as a company. It's a guarantee. So why buy? The minute a vendor tells you they do it all, disqualify them. Because they don't. They're average at everything.
It's funny. It's funny you bring this up because this is a topic I've had a conversation with a lot of people about recently. Is this whole, right? Is the industry moving towards you're going to buy the one thing that does it all, or is it going to continue to move to this breaking it down? And I hope it's not. I don't see it moving this way, but I hope it doesn't move to this one thing, because that's what leads us to have these systems that we've had for decades that don't really meet our needs, but we can't get rid of them because we have everything in it. And the thought of having to pull it all out into something else is just overwhelming, versus, as you said, when you have all these slivers and you say, well, this one's not meeting our need anymore, or we're moving in a different direction. It's much easier to unplug that sliver and plug something else in where you need it than to try and revamp the entire system.
So think about this one, even within the space itself, right? So I'm going to take a leap of faith here. And I saw another one of the vendors join your feed and say it was very neat to have this conversation. I believe our friends at EdCast, since I can talk about others but not myself, it's fine. All learning experience portals are not the same. So when I first learned about Degree, they were talked about as an ultimate curation platform, right? The ability to curate content and provide the best experience. When I hear EdCast talk, I hear about learning in the flow of work. Can they both curate content and deliver learning in the flow of work? Probably, but I'm not on the EdCast product team, nor am I on the Degree product team, nor am I speaking with fact about what their investments are in. And they may call me afterwards and both chew me out. But I got to decide what's most important to me. Am I trying to solve a curation problem for users to go find content, or am I trying to deliver learning in the flow of work? Am I trying to figure out how to leverage my Microsoft Teams investment, or am I just trying to have a better portal that people use? Once that decision's made, I don't have to have a competition between EdCast and Degree. I already know which was better player because one was built for one, the other one wasn't. Now, yes, I'm sure I'm going to get like 7 messages from both of them telling me that we do it all. Why'd you say that? Not that we're that popular, but there, even within the nuances of that, Chris, there are like,
well, there are. Right. And that's where not all XYZ platforms are created equal,
right?
Which is why the building these partnerships and getting to know people. It's why I spend so much time talking to you, talking to these other companies, so that I can understand, hey, this is really where you play best. And so when you have that specific need, this is where this player plays. And again, you brought it up earlier and I was going to dig into it, and then I got distracted with something that you said and I forgot to bring it up. Sometimes it is, and this is where that partnership comes into play. Who are you aligned with in terms of strategy, the way you're thinking about things, the way you work? Maybe the platform can flex a little bit, and you may say, I'm choosing this platform over this platform, not necessarily because on a techs and specs list, they're so different, but because ideologically or where our strategy is going, this one's more closely aligned with that.
Yeah, I mean, so when I go to bed at night, my CTO goes to bed at night, we think about analytics and how do we make it easier for people to use learning data to drive results, right? So last week 2 weeks ago, we were at the Concero event, great people down there, put on a hell of an event for there. We had a lot of meetings, but in one of our meetings, which I won't tell the particular, they showed up on our profile. And I'm like, this person, why did they pick us? I don't understand how they selected us. Why are they, whatever. And my business development person wants to have a conversation with them about how we can spin the story. And I'm like, no, we're going to start off by actually asking why they chose us and then saying, I don't think we're a good fit because I don't think it aligns with anything you're trying to accomplish, right? She tried to figure out ways to use us, by the way. I kid you not. She then at that moment tried to figure out, tell me why I was wrong, which is fine. But there's a level of that honesty that has to happen in a relationship. Say, you know what? This is my specific pain. There's a better solution for this than mine, right? I have lots of competitors, people who say they're going to do it. And, I have an ultimate respect for them. They have phenomenal products. They do great work, right? But some of them are just better at things than we are. Does that hurt me to say? No.
If anything, I think that creates, again, it's the vulnerability and trust that goes into, hey, this is where that trust and partnership comes in. And you say, look, we're not the best at this. And I think we on our side, on the practitioner side, need to do a better job of saying, listen, we're not ready to handle some of the capability. We need to be back here. We aren't there. And if we buy your product, we aren't going to be able to utilize 90% of it because operationally, the way we operate just doesn't work. So yeah, we'll have all the buzzwords, but we won't be doing anything with it.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting. This is whenever we chat like this, I told you we just need to go live with it.
Okay, come on, we're good at this.
We're good at it. Well, and I think this goes into, Boss mentioned it in the comments. This is a challenge. And I think that's part of where this started. It's some of these conversations. It's the community that we're building. Is there is an ocean of tools out there that all specialize in different things. Some all say the same things, and it can feel overwhelming. And I think that's where, things like this to talk about your practitioner and specialist analogy really resonated, by the way, Jordan. So while I'm not glad your back is not doing so hot, I'm glad it at least inspired a good analogy.
Well, and I think that's just the whole process here. We should go, we think about, we would never, and when we come to our personal lives, and that we would never, with good conscience, not look for the specialist to help us with the problem, right? That's the kind of mindset we have to have internally when we're looking for technology solutions, because we have a responsibility. Responsibility isn't just to the business. All of us, hopefully all of us, have 401ks, or saving for the future, probably investing in the stock market, right? That makes you a shareholder. You're putting your money and trust into an organization to deliver on their promise and execute and manage that money the most efficiently, right? And to get the best results. Your household, like our household, if you're doing your household, right, I'm going to go build a house and you're going to go get somebody, you're going to come in. I'm going to have a guy who's a general contractor do my drywall or my electric. You would never not have an electrician do your electric unless you want your house to burn down. Right? You might get lucky and it might not work, right? You may have an expert electrician, but if, and there are some do-it-yourselfers out here who are making fun of me, but for all of us who can't use tools, and aren't do-it-yourselfers.
I've gotten zapped a couple times. I knew, there are certain things I just won't touch.
Right. So electrician, right? You got the plumber, right? There's like 3 things on the toilet that you check, and okay, great, I'm out. Plumber.
Yep.
Right. So then again, you don't go to the general contractor and say, go fix my toilet. They might be able to, but the reality is you want the plumber. You want it certified. You want to protect it, right? We have this thing called certified, right? And so if you think about that when you're buying technology, you stop for a second and say, wait a second. Okay, I just got trapped, right? We have a usage. Let's say we have an engagement problem. I'm going to fix that by getting a better learning portal. Okay, let's break that down. What's the engagement problem? Number one problem is users find it too difficult to use. Great. What do they mean by too difficult to use? They can't search to find what they want. Awesome. Great. How much percentage of the company is that are actually doing the searching? Well, what do you mean?
5 whys, right? Digging into it.
Right. Digging in. Right. Oh, shit. Actually, I'm going to ask the second question. If we push this to you in the flow of work, would this matter? Yes. If it showed up with my team, I'd be super excited. Now I've asked all these questions as a good therapist, uncovers the problem, gets the person on their couch and give them the answers, right? And pulling you in there. And so I think that kind of makes us, gets us a platform to say, okay, now I know the problem and I have 3 vendors that solve the problem in 3 different ways. We may have to make trade-offs, right? Yep. I may have to say, look, price, availability, language whatever the needs are, these things dictate over the one single solution that's the best, but the single solution, they have a bad reputation in the market. They're the greatest technology, but they don't service their customers. I'm out, right? I'd rather take number 2 because that person gets on the phone or responds to email.
Well, and a comment that came through from Tony, and it's a good one, right? We talked earlier about, hey, on the partnership side, uh, it's important for, practitioners to do a good job being a partner so that you as vendors really are there and you have our backs. We have a responsibility to do the same. Or, I think vendors also have a responsibility to do the same. And you've been very transparent about that, because I can't count how many times where I've gone through the process and ultimately we've said, hey, it's not the right fit, only to come back later and say, but you were so good in the partnership, and now that need has risen, or we are at a level of maturity where we are ready to go there. And then, right, you know who you call, you bring that back. So I think there's ample opportunity and ample room for that honesty, transparency, and trust to continue to improve.
And it should be something you guys require as the other side of the table. Because what you're doing there is you're breaking the model that companies, you're challenging to find the good people. And the humility part's big, the moral courage is big. But think about it this way, in today's world of technology buying, most of this has happened through electronic selection, right? I've gone to a website, I've been email bombarded to death. I've clicked on an email, I've responded to an email. An SDR who's likely a person out of college that doesn't know how to spell enterprise, has never worked in a large company, has gotten the phone and start talking about feature and benefits. They've handed you off to the account manager, who may be 3 or 4 years a veteran from an SDR, who's now running a rhythm, who's being metric and how fast they can get you from A to B. They give you a demo, they get you a thing. Now they're handing you a solution specialist. It's like the telephone game, right? Now you're at the solution specialist. They're telling you how this problem's be solved. They got the expert in the room, right? The core thing you're not building is rapport, and being that you force the agenda. You can say, look, I respond to this, but I have no interest in talking to anybody but the solution specialist. I'm not talking to your account manager.
Yeah.
Because what I want to do is I want to get immersive. I want to share our business pain. I want to see it, how you've done it for other people. And if you can't demonstrate that for me, then that's okay. We're going to go elsewhere.
Yep.
But it's a partnership because it's a rapport, right? It's the rapport up front. It gets us going. We build that rapport. It builds that trust, that bridge. And if the vendor on the other side is also hiding, guess what you just found? You want to run as fast as you can.
Exactly. And that's where when I hear the things, where it'll come up and I've, people say, oh, we were sold a bill of goods. Maybe, but that's a two-way street. That didn't happen on its own. That due diligence that we can put in on our end can really, like you said, you uncover these things early enough in the process that you like you said, you can run before you get down that path and go, how did we get here? We spent all this money, we did all this stuff, and now we're stuck with something that doesn't do what we thought it was going to.
And I know we're running out of time, but I'll give our last analogy here. I think about that AT&T commercial, right? Where everything about the okay, when they say, the person's okay, right? Nobody wants okay. You want the best you can have, the best you can afford, the best you can do. That comes from that research preparation and making that partnership where you have that actual transparency. And that's all before you get to the RFP. Because once you're in the RFP state, you're out of control. You've moved out. Now the buying process is without you in most companies, and you're being told you can't talk, when you can talk, and all those things. Now you're in a closed loop.
Yep.
So take the time, get the research, and get going.
Yeah. Nope. I think that's fantastic advice. Hopefully for those of you who have been tuning in and listening, there are more than a multitude of takeaways that I think on both sides. I know we have vendors and practitioners that both watch this, and I think there's lessons we can both take, because we can do better. We can do better on both sides. There's room for improvement, but ultimately we need each other. And, we need to be able to move through this successfully, ultimately, because it's not about us. That's the other thing that I think sometimes we get so hung up on us. It's like, this isn't about us. This is about our employees. It's about our organizations. And the way we serve them best is by getting over ourselves and really doing our best to move things forward. So, this has been awesome, Jordan. I really appreciate you joining me again. I appreciate, your candor and transparency, and just the opportunity to connect. And for those of you watching, the comments have been blowing up. I've tried to loop in as many as I can, but by all means, we'll try and respond to those, here and there. But thanks, Jordan, for being here. Really appreciate the time. I hope you're back. Quickly gets better and you don't have to have surgery. But you have a great weekend, and thanks everybody for watching.